Hello, I'm Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the thought-provoking new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a lifelong journalist, having produced for Diane Sawyer at ABC News, Charles Crawls at CBS News, and miscellaneous folks at CNN. And I love learning and expanding my knowledge, and I found this to be the perfect place to go to have regular conversations with my dear friend, David Parker, who is the author of two excellent books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative, hence the title of our series. And David is joining us from San Francisco. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine. The weather's fine here. And how's the weather over there?
It's good. It's a beautiful day. Despite my background, which is the Golden Gate Bridge, or black and white photo of the Golden Gate Bridge, which sort of pays homage to your book cover. I'm in Connecticut, but it's a beautiful day here in Connecticut. So thank you so much. I thought I'd do something a little bit different with this conversation. I know that you recently spoke with did an interview with a television station in Pittsburgh, and you and I were talking recently leading up to that interview about Andrew Carnegie. And I just thought, you've spent, hundreds, probably thousands of hours of scholarly work to uncover the ideas that you share with all of us in your two books and in your other writing. And I was just wondering if you could kind of walk us through some pivotal historical characters who you find fascinating. And, it's interesting. So many of us, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, just have kind of a short-term attention span. We know that history is important. We know some history, but we don't know history the way that you do. And I was just wondering I'd love to hear you talk about some of the pivotal characters we can really learn from. What comes to mind for you?
Well, Andrew Carnegie is an inspiration for me. I read younger Empire of Business, and he said a few things that made me realize that he really understood money and economics and human nature and life. One thing he said is, when you're young, if you want to make a fortune, don't go to college like professional athletes. He didn't use that, but that's a good. If you're in your prime, or even like mathematicians, they're in their prime when they're teenagers. They almost shouldn't be in college. They should just be studying mathematics, because they'll make a fortune pretty quickly. Most fortunes are made very quickly. Andrew Carnegie made his fortune by 30, or 33 at the most, and he was the richest man perhaps today in the world. He says, because your mind is fertile and you need to concentrate. If you go to school, he says, it's really impressed me. You're going to get study business or get an MBA. You're not going to want to start at the bottom because you have so much work getting that MBA. You're going to start in the middle. And I don't know if he said that or not, but I pulled out. If you start in the middle, you will never rise to the top. You have to start at the bottom. You have to work in the mailroom and realize maybe they don't have mailrooms today, but if you were working in the mailroom in his day, you'd see who's getting which letters. It's unbelievable what you learn. If you're the custodian, who comes in early in the morning, or who does this and who does that? He says, start at the bottom and don't stay there. Just keep moving up, keep moving up. Keep moving up, but start at the bottom. He started at the bottom. He came to America with no money, no contacts. And by 33, richest man in the world, no college education himself. And then he became very well educated. That's why we have Carnegie libraries, because he was going to the library and studying all day long. That's one. There's lots of stuff from Andrew Carnegie I can go on.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting that all of that is very interesting. I think about, again, some of the early tycoons and empire builders and so on. And I was speaking earlier today with a friend who's basically a business coach, about mindset. You have to have the right mindset. If you're a pessimist, you think that'll never work, or that kind of thing. But if you say there's so many opportunities around, or people are talking about, you pick up a newspaper, they say inflation and this is wrong and that's wrong. But if you say there's really a lot of possibilities here, you can really step into them. And again, maybe from the same era as Andrew Carnegie, I've read a few wonderful quotations from Henry Ford. And I think my favorite is, he said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right, because it is about mindset. And I mean, I'm also reminded when I hear you talk about Andrew Carnegie of that great story you tell about, was it your grandfather who said he went out for the day and came back with kind of a different portfolio?
Well, that was one of my inspirations for my book, Income and Wealth, that they're absolutely unrelated. And one inspiration was my grandfather. They were refugees from Austria, from World War II. They came as far away as they possibly could, San Francisco. And he was pacing the house. And my grandmother says, go out, do something, get a job, something. So he went out and came back with 4 movie theaters. I was 14, and I says, that really impressed me. And there was 2 other incidents like that. I realized he didn't have the money. He didn't buy them. He turned out he got some investors. He called them up. I got 4 movie theaters, put up the money, and we'll all be partners. And he says, fine. So it's kind of in the streets, and it's you don't find deals, you make deals. It's one of the things. So getting back to Andrew Carnegie, he really understood most profoundly. And there's a gospel of wealth, and my income and wealth, I feel some connection there. My income and wealth is kind of a gospel of wealth also. Basic timeless laws of money and economics are in my income and wealth, timeless laws.
And I get the sense that, I don't know, maybe I'm stretching here. You can tell me if I'm looking at it, correctly. But I get the sense that when we think of how Andrew Carnegie looked at the world in terms of possibilities and just not going to settle for anything, any obstacles, or let any obstacle stand in his way, that can really be true for all of us. I know that when you and I have talked about, the problem of racial discrimination in our society, basically you've said, just don't sit still for that. I mean, I'm sure it's challenging for the individuals, but it's like there's always a way to prove your worth, to bring value to the table. I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Right, but it's all connected. You mentioned Henry Ford. Henry Ford, I've talked to people and I've told them to some extent, some of my deals I got was out of pure persistence. I just didn't let it go. And in the end, I was the last person there. And someone says, okay, you're going to have it. I'm sick of looking at you. But Henry Ford just wouldn't let it go. He says, I'm going to design an engine. I want an engine designed with all cylinders on one side. And all his engineers says it can't be done. He says, I'm paying you. I'm giving you all the money I have, and I'm paying you. And after 1 year, they didn't get it. 1 more year. I'm paying you. Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear it. You design it. And when he got that, that was the Model T Ford that made a fortune. But he insisted, and Edison is famous for, Thomas Edison is famous for insisting. They say 1,000 mistakes, but they were all necessary. He just persisted. And there's a certain persistence in Andrew Carnegie. And I've talked to people who have been successful, and that came up very often. I said, I'm persistent. Well, so am I. That's how I got it myself. And Andrew Carnegie was there's a book written by, I shouldn't say that. His last name is Nassau, Nassau. I think he's on faculty of New York University. And he wrote an 800-page book on Andrew Carnegie. And it made me think, but it also made me realize this person is an academic. He didn't really understand Andrew Carnegie. He was so thorough that he ended up saying stuff that I latched onto. that the author didn't latch onto. The author didn't really understand some of the profound things but he mentioned it, thankfully. He was just so thorough. He mentioned everything. Andrew Carnegie gets a bad rap for union busting and acting like a monopolist, but that's really not quite right. What he understood is that you never stop production. When the market is down, people can't hold on. That's one big lesson in business I can tell to everybody. You better be able to hold on in a downturn, because that's when you pick up all the other businesses that are failing. And he just picked up every single steel mill every time there was a downturn in the economy. He had them all, not by union busting. The union, he achieved such success so young that he had to turn over the whole enterprise to a person named Frick, the Frick Museum in New York City. I forget his first name, because he didn't have time. He had so much money, it was a full-time career giving it away correctly, building libraries and foundations for peace all over the world. And that person, Frick, is responsible for that, the deaths for the big labor strike at the Carnegie Mills. Not Carnegie. He said he would have stopped production, would have broken his rule, but he promised Frick he would not step in and override what he's doing. So he gets blamed for it. In fact, it's not him. He wouldn't have let that happen. But stopping production, that should have been a whole chapter. Carnegie talks about that in all his stuff. That was not a whole chapter in the book. The author didn't grasp that. That was his success.
Yeah. No, interesting. Well, I just wanted to throw in, if any of you are joining us midstream here, this is a San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring my colleague, David Parker, who's author of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, your co-host, asking hopefully thought-provoking questions. I'm certainly enjoying hearing about all of this. I just wanted to.
I didn't answer your question on the discrimination.
Okay.
There was a woman, maybe Lakshmi something. I'm not sure. She's a chef. She has 2 TV programs. She's from India, and she has 2. She's one of the most successful chefs on television programs. She says she comes from India, and her mother says, which is a misogynist culture to the max. And her mother says, forget it. You just go around everything that anybody tells you. There's ways to go around. There's more than one way to skin a cat, you could say. So you never let that be, and that applies to all minorities in this country, because all minorities in every country experience unfair discrimination. There's no country that does not discriminate against some minority. The Chinese are severely discriminated against in Indonesia, and they've had pogroms, killing 100,000 at a time, because they're jealous of the Chinese who are running the economy. It's got 50 or 90 million population, and the Chinese are a tiny minority, and they're running the whole country. So they get mad and they just knock them off. They go around. And I say that if you're trained as a Black architect and nobody will hire you, work for a Black architect, work for Black clients, turn within your community. That's how all minorities in this country have eventually succeeded. Greeks, anybody coming here, nobody will hire them. They work for themselves among their own community. And pretty soon, because money speaks, this architect is really good. We don't care what color he is. Get that guy on our staff. Or you could say the Negro baseball. The Dodgers wanted to win the pennant so bad, forget it. Where's Jackie? Get him over here. Bring them all over here. That's how it happens. You earn respect, and then that breaks down race.
Yeah.
Racism. Respect is a cure for racism.
It was interesting. No, it is very interesting. At the time we're recording this episode of our podcast series, it was just a week or 2 ago that Bill Russell, the great basketball player, passed away. And apparently he was a real pioneer. They said that prior to Bill Russell, most of the guys on the NBA basketball teams were white, and nothing, nothing wrong, black or white, but the door was closed. But I guess maybe similar to Jackie Robinson, people realized like, oh my gosh, Bill Russell is so amazing. I think he was with the Celtics, Boston Celtics. We have to let him in. It's like, wow, he's amazing. And so again, breaking that color barrier, it's interesting.
The Senator Bill Bradley from New York played professional basketball at that time. And he said that Bill Russell was the smartest basketball player by far, anywhere in the nation.
That's amazing.
You don't get to where you are without being smart.
Yeah. And then apparently he was also involved in the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King and so on. So it's interesting.
Martin Luther King, and he stood up for Muhammad Ali. And after the trial, the Evers trial, or in Mississippi, he was right there. Very smart and very good. Very good. In
terms of, I guess we just have a couple of minutes left in this episode, but does anyone else come to mind, whether it's business leader like Andrew Carnegie, or somebody breaking barriers in terms of that quality of persistence? I get the sense that you really like that quality of persistence. I would imagine that's played a role in your own success. Right. It makes up for. I'm not you don't have to be a genius is what it means. I'm not the smartest person on the block, but I work smart. And that's, I heard that actually from a Black entrepreneur. He says, I'm not the smartest on the block, but I work smart. And Ronald Reagan says, I read something that inspired me just before he took office, when he ran in 1980, whatever it was, he became president. I forget the year. This was December, a couple of weeks before he took office in January. He says, I'm not the smartest cookie on the block, but that's not that important. Just what's important in life is that you feel that what you're doing is important, and that you feel you have something to contribute. That's all you need. You can be a happy person. I'm a happy person, he says, and he was a happy person in his own way. Yeah. And would you say that has played a role in your own life? Again, we were talking a few minutes ago about your grandchildren, and I know you love travel and art. You play jazz all the time. Sounds like you have a happy life that has been made possible because you've had that persistence. You don't stop, right? Yeah, everything I've done, you see it from the surface. This guy is doing everything. Everything required a lot of work. I didn't become a jazz musician overnight, and I'm playing with musicians who are over my head. In fact, I have one of the best bands in town. I can barely keep up with those. I have to keep practicing. I can't just come on the gig and, hey, they can hear in 5 seconds. You're not practicing, man. I can't have that. So, everything, all the writing, all this reading 800 pages. I think I said before, postgraduate work. I have a master's in music. After that, and after teaching credential, after college, I have at least 35,000 hours of focused, annotated study of important works, all important works that have ever been written. So, and now I can talk like I'm free and easy, but I can back up everything I'm talking about. Yeah, well, reading your books makes that very, very clear. And it's interesting, like you were saying about that book, about that biography of Andrew Carnegie. It's possible for an academic to write a book like that and miss certain important secrets or keys to success. It's very, very interesting. Well, I love your books, and I think we're out of time for this conversation, but I certainly want to remind everybody to be sure to pick up a copy of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative. You can do that on David's website, which is davidparkeressays.com, or you can go to Amazon and purchase them there. But again, as we've just been discussing, so much thought went into this, and it's the experience, it's the perspective that comes out of working in the trenches for all these years. That really shines through in your work. So great work, David. I really appreciate it. Thank you. If I can add,
San Francisco Conservative is that chapter on Andrew Carnegie. It's one of my best essays I've ever written.
Excellent. Excellent.
Right.
We'll look for that. Excellent. Okay. Well, great seeing you. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Great. Thank you too.
Thank you.